Hey, it's Pete at Pete Snake by Kit. Thanks for coming by and paying me a visit again. What we're going to do today is we're going to go look at another car museum. But you may wonder why there's no Cobra in the garage and just my Ford Raptor. Well, it's kind of like a Raptor. In '96, they made these, and it's just like a Raptor, except instead of a four-door, it's a two-door. And instead of a bunch of horsepower, it's got a pushrod 302 that makes about 123 horsepower. And it doesn't have much suspension travel. Other than that, it's just like a Raptor. Anyway, this is in there for some air pump surgery, and the car was at the body shop getting its winter touch-up. Anyway, back to the subject on hand. Let's go to the museum. I grew up in LA, and I lived in LA, Orange County all my life until just a few years ago. And if you can believe it, I've never been to the PETERSEN Auto Museum. So this will be my first trip to the Pete. It's a pretty cool museum. Let's go take a look. All right, the PETERSEN Automotive Museum. It was obviously put together originally by the PETERSEN family. They, of course, are the owners of the publishing empire, you know, Motor Trend, Rod and Custom, Carcraft, Hot Rod, Sports Car Graphic, Motorcyclist, Motor Life, Four Wheel, on and on and on, a bunch of them. It's located right downtown LA in Fairfax and Wilshire Boulevards, and really iconic, cool looking building. But this thing is an icon of the car world, and it's also an icon of downtown LA. It's worth checking out. Well, let's take a look. A lot of the rooms at the PETERSEN have a theme. This was, of course, a race car theme, but there was drag racing and some other stuff mixed in, which was kind of weird. But of course, the anchor of the room was one of John Force's Top Fuel funny cars. Of course, he's been a dominant force in that just for decades. I mean, I think he's won more Wallies than anybody in the business. What was really interesting is you can see on this engine, it calls it a Boss 500. Some Mopar dude came into the room when I was there, and I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He just couldn't believe that it said Boss 500 on a Chrysler Hemi. It ruined his day. This was another one of their, I guess, theme rooms. And this was, I think, just their iconic cars of the museum. The pieces in here were really outstanding. This Rolls Royce was unbelievable. Like anything else, pictures do not do it justice. I think this is one of the most impressive and beautiful cars I've ever seen in my life. This is a one of one. Apparently then you would buy a Rolls Royce chassis and then you would have somebody build a body for it. So this is the only one like it, but it was just so big and impressive and beautiful. Spent quite a bit of time looking at this. To put the size into perspective, this is a 21-inch wheel. I put my hand up against it just so you can see, you know, the size of this thing. This car was huge. In the day and age of everything being an upsell, it can be frustrating to go to a museum and then have them ask, hey, do you want to pay 20 bucks more and see the vault? I think it was $20. It's worth it. Pay the extra, see the vault, and be ready to walk. There's more than 200 cars. I think they said there's 250-ish cars down there. And just a crazy mix of cars. Some had signage by them. Some did not have signage. Some of them you obviously knew what they were and the importance of the car. Some of it, you know, you're kind of looking at like, what's the deal on this one? But I thoroughly enjoyed the vault. I mean, you're walking along and you see Speed Racer's powerful Mach 5. You walk a few more steps and you expect to see Bruce Lee to get out of the Green Hornet's car. Then you have an example of what happens to a Tesla Cybertruck if it gets parked on King Kamehameha Highway too long on the island of Oahu. In all seriousness, in all of my travels, I have never seen a car that's a survivor from a crash test. Kind of different to see, but just all kinds of different stuff. There's something for everybody here. A lot of cars that you recognize, some you won't. I mean, this is Old Yeller. This is Old Yeller number 3. But if you're watching this video, you know the history of Old Yeller. It's like I'm standing here looking at, it can walk up and touch one of the legendary Old Yeller race cars. How about this one? A Chrysler Darren. This car was really odd looking. You can blow this up and read the history about it. What really got my eye was the doors. They got cameras everywhere, and they got guys walking around if you're touching the cars or anything. I almost wanted to risk my life and just open and close these sliding doors once, just to see how they worked. Are these sliding doors cool, or what? All right, enough of that. Let's talk about Cobras. There's a number of Cobras there. Most of them were replicas. Here you can see the difference between a couple of them, kind of the fit and finish and how, let's say, how original some of them look. And I kind of get a kick out of looking at this and how original some are and how big of variations there are on some things. Here's another one that actually is called a Cobra that predates the Cobra. That was kind of a Cobra. It was put together, a big engine and a different chassis and made to look pretty cool and was, 10 years before the Cobra. And then I saw another one that, boy, some of the things they call Cobras, just because it's got big tires and has a Shelby engine in it, I don't know, man. Well, you be the judge. Tell me what you think of this one. I've worked on a lot of cars. I worked on a few Audis. Not really a fan of working on Audis. Once I saw this one, hey, shoehorning a V10 in and out of this thing looks like something I do not want to be involved in. Very cool looking engineering, but I'm not going there. This room here was an icon of motorsports. This McLaren Chaparral with a big block Chevy in it just looks like a wicked piece of engineering. One of the cars I look at, every once in a while I look at a car and say, no, I would not want to put that thing into a corner at speed. This one looks pretty terrifying. I don't know, maybe you'd like it. A lot of cool stuff in here. A lot of cars I've heard about, seen pictures of. Really neat to see these things up close. This is called the PETERSEN Automotive Museum, but there's lots of motorcycle stuff. Of course, I don't mind because I'm kind of a motorcycle guy. One of the things that caught my eye was this Honda 500. This is one of their works bikes or factory race bike, kind of a Formula One dirt bike. Look at this hand-welded seam that goes the length of that swing arm. That's because it was handmade like the rest of the motorcycle. Here's another good one, 1983 CR480. Had one of those, loved racing that thing. Had a lot of laps in on that one at Ascot in Gardena. Believe it or not, Harley-Davidson made dirt bikes at one point. Here's a couple of their motocross bikes. Kind of cool to see those. But there's just motorcycles in every direction in one part of the vault. They were kind of neat to see. And, race bikes, street bikes, motocross bikes. They even had some motorcycles with smooth tires. I never really got those things, but anyway, to each his own. So we'll just go through a bunch of random cars here that we saw down in the vault. And here's a Ford GT. Who doesn't love looking at those? And that was a car that went from drawing board to production in about 18 months, which is kind of gnarly if you think about it. This next one, got a lot of pictures of it, and I didn't see any plaque around it. Just one of those things. It's just amazing engineering. I'm guessing it's pre-war, late 30s, early 40s, somewhere there, around there. And just so much stuff that looks, handmade and just made to look beautiful. We'll just roam through some of the vault here for the next couple seconds, and you can see, get a better idea of what's down there, but the vault really is worth seeing. Anyway, we're going to go upstairs. We're going to look at some TV and movie cars. Let's check that out. So who doesn't love the movie Gumball Rally? And here's the Cobra. Well, I guess they used 3 in it at least, but here's the Cobra. That's kind of what they call the hero car from that movie, restored to just beautiful condition. You'll notice the wheels, which are original magnesium wheels, have got kind of a coating on them, because the sad thing about magnesium wheels is they never stop dying, basically, and if they're uncoated, they look kind of like they have cancer or something. But this is just a beautiful car and a neat piece of history. Something else worth mentioning about this car is this was originally a street roadster Cobra. We'll look at the dash up close. You can see that's the gauge layout for a street roadster, and it has a glove box. So the side pipes and the hood scoop, you may notice the hood scoop is not riveted. Those were added onto this car, and my understanding is there was a lot of that done in the 60s and 70s. My opinion is that is period correct. Obviously, an amazing looking car. There have been a lot of renditions of the Batmobile over the years in TV and movie. This one, I think, is the meanest, most sinister looking one that they made. It just played so well in the movie. But if you want to make a car like this and really put some cool factor in it, what kind of gas cap should you use? Yep, one right off of a Cobra. How about that? Every car nerd has seen Christine. More than once, I'm willing to bet. This movie it played out so well with this 58 Chrysler. This is one of the cars from the movie. Obviously, it's not the car from the last scene when it got squished into a cube. I think they said they used 15 of these or something ridiculous like that. Speaking of cars that needed work at the end of the movie, here's a T-Bird from Thelma and Louise. And that was a pretty iconic movie at the time. If this isn't confusing, this is the actual car from the movie Cars, but this isn't the actual car because that movie was animated. Did you follow that? Bruce Brown did a movie in 1970. Steve McQueen actually funded it, and it was called On Any Sunday. And it defined for a generation how truly cool motorcycle and motorcycle racing is. This bike was actually the one that Malcolm Smith rode in the Elsinore Grand Prix that they filmed. By the way, if you ever got to meet Malcolm Smith, he just was one of the coolest dudes ever. I got to meet him a couple of times. Couldn't be more down to earth. And he just accomplished so much in the motorcycle world. Speaking of iconic movies centered around a car, Back to the Future is obviously one of the biggest ever. I think one of the biggest movie magics was actually getting that DeLorean to go 88 miles an hour in a short space with that turd of a V6 Peugeot motor it had in it. But pretty cool movie. I couldn't resist. I had to lean in there and get a shot to see what the last date was that this thing was set to. There you have it. All right, here's Kit from Knight Rider, 1982 Trans Am. Here's the Starsky and Hutch Torino, 1976, had to be the pinnacle of 0 horsepower from engines. I thought the Scooby-Doo van looked pretty dang cool. Anytime you can make a cartoon come to life and it looks real, it just kind of jumps out at you. Here's the second rendition of Gone in 60 Seconds. This version of Eleanor was, of course, a 67 Mustang that had all these add-ons. This actually caused a fiberglass shortage in the world, from what I understand, from everybody adding these silly things on their Mustang. Here's a 50 Merc from the movie Cobra with Sylvester Stallone, and I realized, never seen this. It's called Cobra. I probably need to go back and watch it. All right, we're going to look at some concept cars, some show cars. Here's a spot. This was pretty cool how they had a concept car from each one of the big three, Ford, Chrysler, and GM. And I took a quick walk around these. They were all pretty special looking. And, these are from quite a few years ago. And I think they all look pretty modern even today. So the Petersen had a supercar display there, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to get excited about a car that I couldn't even afford to replace a tire on if the time came. But, these things are what they are. I wanted to get you guys a few shots of it. But I've never been able to get excited about ultra expensive supercars, but they are beautiful and they are cool looking. They had this display of a 65 GT350 Mustang and then this Barracuda, same time period. The Barracuda really had some cool cues and modifications on it. If you take a look at the door handles and the side pipes as we go by. I think one thing they missed on this is, I don't care if you can rotate the tires. It needs bigger tires in the back, guys. But an absolutely beautiful piece nonetheless. Here's some more concept cars. This one's a 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne. Just absolutely beautiful. Kind of taking us back to the time when, they had all these one-off custom-made concept cars. Kind of looks like Corvair proportions to me. But really, really nice looking. So right next to that was this Pontiac Bonneville. And this one's weathered. I know lacquer paint from the era didn't really last too long. So this looks like it's never been restored, which is kind of neat to see. But, really kind of space bubble looking top on it. Something called a Bonneville. Where should you have it registered? Utah. That's where Bonneville is. There's a lot of cool cars registered in Utah. Hey, how'd that get in there? Alright, the whole bottom floor of the Petersen, the ground floor, was all lowrider stuff. Hey, this may or may not be your thing, but you've got to take a look at some of this stuff. It is artwork. The detail on these cars just absolutely blew my mind. Every one of these was just beautiful, but just, 25 different colors on a car, and they've all been sanded to perfection, and they've been cleared over, and they're flawless. But the hand engraving on the hydraulic systems and the bottom half of the car, on the turbochargers, just on and on. I'll show you some shots as they had some bicycles on display with the same level of detail. This is, two things struck me. These are masterpieces and these are lifetime projects. I don't see even a shop being able to pull off all of this detail work in less than, 5 years. It was really something to see. Here's something that was not only flawless and beautiful, but I thought pretty creative. I don't know if it picks it up in the shots here, but the fenders were metal flake, exact same color as a body, but the body wasn't metal flake, and it really plays a game with your eye as you're walking around the car. Okay, that's what my trip to the Petersen looked like. It was a lot of fun. If you get anywhere near the Petersen, do yourself a favor. Go see the museum. Give yourself some time. You're going to walk your legs off, but there's a lot to enjoy. When I get the Cobra back from the body shop, of course, I'm going to show you that. I actually had something jump off the shelf and scratch the fender. There's a couple other minor things he needed to touch up, and that thing's going to look beautiful again when I get it back. Can't wait to see it. When I see it, I'll show you. Be safe.